Hi, this is Zach Hawkins, and welcome to Inside Student Affairs, your opportunity to meet the people and the departments and leaders that make the work that we do to foster student success absolutely happen at Carolina. And so today with me, I'm so excited to have Director of UNC Wellness, Dean Blackburn. Dean has had over 20 years of experience in the health and well-being space at UNC and has also had about 30 years of experience overall in his educational career. And so Dean has really led our health and wellness and promotion efforts at the university, and we're excited to have him here today to talk about how they're working with students during this pandemic. So Dean, welcome.
Thank you, Zach. Good to be here.
Good. Well, Dean and the Inside Student Affairs, as I've shared with you, we try to break down the work that we're doing here in UNC. Of course, people, don't necessarily want to, listen to a town hall all the time, but they do want to get good information about how UNC is making a difference in the everyday lives of students. And so, first off, I just want you to tell people a little bit about you, the work of UNC Wellness, and how or are you managing during this pandemic?
All right, great questions. Thank you. A little bit about myself. You mentioned I've been at Carolina over 20 years, and I really love it here. This is one of the best schools in the country, and I think many of our supporters already know that as well. My background is actually a combination between social work, which is a clinical model, and public health, which is really a large prevention model, and really looking at systems of care and influence for our students. And so I bring both of those together to do some of the work that we do within student wellness. And for those who may be less familiar, we follow a little bit of what we call a medical model. And so it's a continuum of care process. And the way that works is the first part of the continuum of care is largely sufficient education to make sure our students and really our faculty and staff have the knowledge necessary to make the best choices for themselves. And so it's early and ongoing education and information. But if education alone is not sufficient really for behavioral change. And so we back that up with prevention science, which is a specialty area that really looks at addressing systems and cultures and policies to create an environment where with the knowledge students can make the best choice. Of course, the second part of that is they need the skills to do it. And so sometimes students have those skills innately or through life experience, and sometimes they don't. There's no value in that. But we work with students wherever they are to provide essential skills that will help them make the choices that are ultimately in their best interest. The last part of that is going to be kind of the clinical part, and that's really where we partner with CAPS, our counseling and psychological services, to provide the holistic approach for student care. Now, you ask about COVID, and that has certainly been a challenge for many of our students and really for many of us in trying to make sure we can provide the necessary resources for our students. If we know that young adults may already struggle a little bit with, self-esteem and belonging and connection, and that maybe sometimes when they don't have that or don't feel like they are a part of or connected, that they might experience some anxiety, some depression, sometimes even turn to what we might call maladaptive coping processes like too much use of alcohol or other substances or conflict with their peers. And so we want to make sure that we can provide every resource necessary to undergird our students, both during normal times, but especially right now. Of course, that's been some challenges because many of our students are remote, and where we used to be able to meet in person and really build community and peer support, we're really having to be creative right now and do that through many online methods, whether that's Zoom or other drop-in space resources, to really make sure our students have what they need, feel connected, not only to each other, but still to the university if they're studying remotely, and ultimately have all the skills they need to be able to be resilient during this unprecedented time.
No, and I really appreciate that overview, and it's so important for those who really care about this space to understand exactly what your office does. And one of the questions that I'd love to ask is, what are the greatest sort of challenges and needs right now for students during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think a lot of that really is going to be sort of how do they have access to material and support systems at the same time. And so, traditionally where we would do a lot of our work in person, we are now creating online resources that are available really 24 hours a day. Now, from a health and wellness perspective, we don't want students to be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. We want them to be getting their rest. But sometimes people wake up or stay awake, and that might be when they are thinking about, feeling lonely or feeling distressed. And so we want to make sure that they have 24-hour access to everything they need. And so we've really been working to translate a lot of the traditional work into virtual access. And some of that's going to be, more passive, where there's a list of resources or suggestions. Some of that's going to be more interactive, where when we can, we would have a live event,
Yeah.
and they could talk with us and be supported, and we connect them with each other. And then, of course, there may be some opportunities for even recorded but interactive related resources, so that they do feel like they are connected with someone, even if it's just, a pre-recorded resource for that. So really, trying to look forward and be on the cutting edge of making sure not only do our students have what they need right now, but, we're only 8 months into this pandemic, and we don't really know how long it's going to last. And so we're trying to be forward thinking as well, to say, what do we know from past experiences, and what can we surmise from the information that we have, that if this goes into the spring or even the summer or fall, what are the likely needs of just human beings in general, and in particular our students? And so I'm really appreciative that we're not being just reactive, but trying to be proactive in that process.
And absolutely being proactive and making sure that we're anticipating those needs is absolutely important. And so, Dean, I know that some of this is wrapped in a health and well-being initiative that you've been instrumental in developing. Could you walk people through the parts of that and what the potential impact that has on Carolina's campus for the future?
Absolutely. And so what we try to do with our work is we always start with what we might call a needs assessment. So we really want to know, what do students need right now? And that's an ongoing process, because, things change, right? Generations change, students' personalities change. And then, of course, we have current events that can be impactful as well. And what students traditionally and normally tell us is that belonging and connecting with each other is one of those issues.
Mhm.
Um, Trying to navigate new relationships, not just friendships, but maybe significant other relationships, and how awkward and challenging that can be, and how that can create stress. Many were superstars in their high school, and they come to Carolina and they're among other superstars. And so there's, sort of what we might call the imposter syndrome and the insecurities. And those are all normal things, but they can seem mountainous to our individual students who don't realize their peers are going through the same thing. Even things like, deciding about, do I try alcohol? If I try it, how much and where and when? What does it mean when I get in a conflict with my roommate or significant other? How do I navigate those things? Things that many of us, maybe as parents or parent age folks, have twice as much life experience, but our students don't. And so we really try to, again, figure out what they need and build resources around that. For us, it has come down to sort of three primary areas. We might say mental health being the bigger one, and really further defining that to say mental well-being, right? Because mental health traditionally has been associated specifically with clinical needs, and that's important as well. A significant number of our students do have diagnosable mental health conditions that need clinical support, and we want to undergird them as well. But for many of our students, it's really a matter of sort of what are the skills you need, the information you need, the resources you need to cope, to be resilient, to bounce back, to deal with disappointment, to deal with conflict. And so the broader topic of mental well-being is really where we spend a lot of our energy in education and resources. Similarly, it's interpersonal relationships, and that can include healthy relationships and some interpersonal conflict, and really extend even to things like maybe hazing or discrimination or interpersonal violence, including sexual violence. And so those are all really important. And we really want to create both a community and a culture here on campus that has respect for all and support for all, and mutuality for all, but also set folks up for success once they leave here as well, whether it's with work relationships or significant others, family, friends, etc. So we really want to focus on the interpersonal relationship component. And then the last would be, and this often is intersected with those, goes back to that decision around sort of alcohol and other drugs, right? And so we know that some of our students are going to make decisions about that, and they're going to choose often to consume alcohol, maybe even to experiment and consume other substances. And we really want to make sure they have all of the current, most recent evidence-based information and skills to make those choices. Peer pressure is a big part of that. And so how do we help students feel a sense of self-agency and empowerment to know that if they don't want to consume any substance or not so much of one, that they can do that regardless of what their peers might be doing at that time. We even talk about the fact that you may want to consume alcohol on this night, but it doesn't mean you want to the next week. And so what does choice look like? What does the ability to make that critical decision look like? And if you have a big test coming up, but your peers don't, you can pass that 1 week. There's going to be other opportunities for social gatherings, and you can still go to the gathering, just not consume or not consume as much. And those are really all important sort of developmental skills to provide for this age group and this transition to, emerging adult, young adulthood, that we really want to make sure that they have ready and easy access to.
Well, this sounds absolutely fascinating and exciting. And so this platform, of course, with me being director of development, is meant for an external audience. And so bringing them in, teaching them how we do our work with departments, with leaders like you. How can someone be a part of this? How can they champion this effort?
Well, I love that word champion, right? Like that's sort of the thing that I think about is this work really appeals to anybody, but definitely there are folks who may have passion, right? Passion about mental well-being or even support for mental wellness, mental health, certainly interpersonal relationships and substance use, kind of managing that and having the knowledge. And so if there's a passion for any or all of those, quite frankly, they're interrelated, we want champions. And I'll alliterate with that a little bit and say there might be 3 ways that a person could be a champion for us and for these topics. And that would be a cheerleader, right? Like go out and tell everyone that this is important work that Carolina is doing and that we are so invested in our students' holistic well-being and success that we really want to provide that whole continuum of care on all these topics, the early education, the intervention when we need to, and the support and ongoing treatment and care and recovery, right? And so if folks aren't familiar, we provide recovery supports to allow students who may have had substance use disorders or even mental health experiences or other process addiction disorders to come back to Carolina and be able to be supported in whatever their process for healing and recovery is and continue their Carolina experience. So we're really excited about that part as well. So be a cheerleader for us. The next might be a connector, right? And so you have friends, if you have passion about this, you're probably in a circle of people who have passion about this. And so please connect us with other alum or corporations or foundations or people who really, really care about this, because we love working with parents and families and alumni and really anybody who cares about these topics. And my last C for that might be contribute. If you're able, contribute in any way, right? And that might be, financially, it might be with your time and your talents and your volunteerism, but any of those ways that you can be a champion for us, we really appreciate and value.
No, well, that's an incredible way to end. And so champion. So find your way to champion these. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Inside Student Affairs with Dean Blackburn with UNC Wellness, talking about our health and well-being initiative. This will be available on Twitter, on our YouTube page, and our UNC Student Affairs website. And so the screen will come up so that you can find exactly where to find it. Please share it. These are quick snippets about the work that we do every day to support the UNC community. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.